Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I think we cover all the time zones with our panel today. I am Kristen Castaldo. I am the IFS Customer Community Lead, which means I manage our community.ifs space. I hopefully have seen many of you guys there. Sorry we're starting a minute late this morning. We're just sorting out a little bit of technical difficulties getting everybody to join. So for those of you who have not attended one of these success sessions, this is part of a series that we're doing. It covers our lunch and learns, our Tech Talk Lives, and our office hours today. These are generally pretty quick sessions, 20, 30, 45 minutes, depending on the topic, to kind of spend your lunch hour learning something new, right? It can be an overview of our product functionality or new resources, tips and tricks. This session is open to our customers, employees, and partners. It's for everybody. This is actually our first office hours session. So the idea behind this session is you guys come with your questions and have an open forum with our experts. This one is obviously covering the IFS Cloud Build Place, which has gotten a lot of coverage. So hopefully you guys have all taken the course on IFS Academy and are ready to ask some questions. You can ask questions in the question section of GoToWebinar, so just post them there and I'll read them out to our panelists. Or we'll unmute everybody and you guys can ask questions directly. We have a small presentation to get us started, and I'm going to hand off to the panel and let everyone introduce themselves, and then we'll get going. All right. Who wants to go first?
I'll go last.
Oh, let Tony go last. He's off the hook.
Hi there, Lee Sarginson. I'm the Global Technical Hub Director for IFS, and I look after the systems engineers, software engineers that do the CRIM development for IFS.
Hi everybody, I'm Afridi Meedin, Senior Engineer IFS and Technical Lead for Lifecycle Experience. So my role basically is to help our customers, partners understand from a technical point of view how CRIM development is done.
Hi, I'm Chaminda Obadage, Global Practice Director for Technical Solution Services. I lead the Global TSM team.
Hi everyone, I'm Tony Johnson. I'm a Program Director in the GCS team, but working pretty closely with R&D to launch the Cloud Build Place and also, it seems, everything else Build Place. Chaminda, I notice you're called Lee. That's quite funny, isn't it? Let's go. Anyway, so let's get started. I've got a couple of slides here, some of which are ripped straight out of the training for Cloud Build Place, and there's a couple of new slides which might be interesting. If you do get a chance to look at the 5 and 5 videos for Awareness Week and Readiness Week, they're fabulous and well prepared. So really would encourage you to do that. So the first thing I want to say about the Build Place is the Build Place is not something new at IFS. You probably heard it before, called Dev B&T. So what we're trying to achieve with the new Cloud Build Place is exactly what we did with the old Cloud Build Place from a simplistic level. We get the IFS core code, we do some custom modifications, we do testing there, and then we prepare deliveries. So at a very simple level, it does exactly the same thing, but it's radically changed under the hood. And what we had with the old Build Place with the Dev B&T for apps 10 was not scalable and certainly needed re-engineering and bringing up to date. So we've got rid of using Harvest and we replaced it with state-of-the-art code management. This is a big change for anyone that's doing source code management within IFS or within the customer ecosystem of IFS. But what's important is this change brings with it great opportunities, but also a change management problem, because people have been building IFS the same way for the last 25 years, and we need to get ready for a new way of working and a different way for our customers and partners to work. One of the big advantages with the new Build Place is it allows us to open that up for partners and customers alike, so they can access and change modifications themselves in partnership or without IFS consulting, and equally we can provide service updates directly to the customer as well. So this is a kind of overview of the Build Place itself. I'm not going to go into detail here. This is part of the awareness week content. But what I think isn't clear for everyone is the lifecycle experience portal, which is, I know, another portal for customers to get into, is the kind of gateway to get into the build place and the kind of way that customers get introduced to that topic. So some people in the customer community think of that as the build place. It's a way that they get to that access, but it's an important part of that framework. And the last thing I wanted to mention before I go on to a bit more detail is around orderable items. So the build place itself comes by standard with 2 environments. They're not like the dev B&T of old. They're not persistent. They are temporary short-term environments, and they can be spun up on a certain version of the code for testing purposes. It only contains 2, and that's in many ways not ideal. When it was first conceived, the build place had more orderable environments built in, but because we are covering the costs of the build place for customers from IFS, we had to pare that back. It does mean the customer can order bundles of extra environments if they need it. And I'm sure Lee's going to tell you, anybody that's got any level of modifications or any level of integration which requires coding will need more than the 2 standard build places, and quite possibly more than the 15 standard users which are also allocated. So that's what comes as standard: 2 on-demand environments and 15 users. The customer can order more. They're priced and available in the GPL, and they can be deployed into their build place. So a little bit about upgrading, and I know there's a lot of discussion now about customers that are moving from apps 10 and apps 9 and 7.5 and into IFS Cloud. But once they get to the cloud platform, there won't be any more upgrades. And we use different terminology to define the updates within the IFS Cloud environment, and there's a good reason for that. It's a very, very different way of managing change. And as well as the change being more frequent, the change is less. So because we've got a release coming every 6 months, it's not that we've waited 3 or 4 years before the next update. In addition to that, with the bringing in the release studio into the cloud build place, it means that there's no need to run scripts against the database for that to be updated. Everything is handled through the deployment and standard install processes. So this is all part of moving customers to that evergreen state, but just changing the release cadence doesn't make that happen. We need to think about how customers are making modifications and if they're tailoring the system in the right way. There's a lot of good content in the lifecycle experience help documentation around tailoring. Really would advise you and advise your customers to take time to look into that area. But just to mention, the releases are twice a year, and they're named R1 and R2, so there won't be an R3 as some people think, which is coming next year. It'll be 22 R1. And the service updates are provided monthly, but not only monthly. If a critical situation happens with the customer and we've got a problem that needs a code fix from R&D, that will have to be provided via a service update in a more ad hoc or occasional way. But they're provided monthly, and they contain only the high severity fixes, and so it can normally be applied without too much difficulty. And we do have a lot of customers on 21R1 that have already gone through that service update process to bring their systems up to service update 5, and 6 is even out now. So just a bit more on that service update process. It's really the Git repositories, which are a key part of the Cloud Build Place, are instrumental in making this happen. So what you can do is you can create a branch off the main repository. You can pull in your service update, and you can test that in a standalone environment away from the normal change that might be going on in your normal path to production. So we've still got that process of impact analysis and potential uplift of CRIMs if there's conflict, but we foresee this as a more straightforward process, providing the customer is following to that tailored plan. And the last slide I want to show is about the release process, and this, it looks a bit more complicated, but that release studio that we talked about just is part of the Cloud Build Place. It's not something new that you need to go to, and not something new the customer needs to order. It's a function within the Cloud Build Place just to simplify the process of creating a new branch and new topic environments, or managing that change alongside the urgent support. And at the end of the release process, that green channel will become the main channel, and the other master branch, as it was, will be obsoleted. So there's a lot of thought and work gone into this process, because it is a change for customers, and we're going to get some resistance, I think, from customers that have been burnt on difficult upgrades before, to move towards this more fast cadence for IFS Cloud. But it is a really important part of that evergreen story that we're able to do that. I tried to make these move in a minute. It probably doesn't work very well, so we'll see what happens. But basically, we get rid of that branch, and we are moving up to having a new master branch within the repository, and that's how we move into the kind of steady state for R2. And then when R3 comes along, we follow the same process again. Good. So that's all the slides I have to get us started. I think it's probably a good time now that we go over to some questions.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Tony. For those who are watching, we are recording the session, so if you missed anything, if there's some slides you wanted to look at a little bit closer, we will be posting those and the recording on the community after the event. We do have a question that came in already, so I will ask, and you guys can decide who takes this one. Until now, the Cloud Place was open for partners. In the future, would customer-trained folks use or develop in the Cloud Build Place? If yes,
is open for customers and partners from the start.
Yeah. So what is the skill level you think that needs to for working?
Well, it depends what they want to do in the build place.
Yeah, for CRIM development, you would have to, of course, know about the standards and the best practices of CRIM development, and there are courses in the IFS Academy that will take you through all of that. And in addition to that, if you go to very important, just knowing how to develop CRIM I don't think it is good enough. You would, for your own good, I think you should also look at the best practices or tailoring guidelines in docs.ifs.com, which has a lot of guidance on how and what you should be doing, not just what you can do, right? Just because you can modify, you should not modify.
Without impact is a really important part of that.
Exactly, yeah. So the impact is higher, or the difficulty in upgrading or applying updates is higher if you do code changes, right? So you should always start with configuration, the lower levels of tailoring, and then proceed to the more invasive levels only if you have to. So docs.ifs.com has a section under cloud. It has a section for tailoring guidelines. So in addition to development training, I highly recommend going through that as well.
The other addition to that one, Chaminda, you're absolutely right. The academy training would be essential for customers getting up to speed, but we'd also offer success services as well. So our development experts in IFS could be there to guide and assist people in how to do the development without necessarily doing it for you as well. So I think it's a combination of the three.
One of the things we've seen from partners, Lee, is that partners who are used to working with Harvest and have not, let's say, embraced the way of working with the Git repositories are finding it difficult down the line if they don't sort of get used to that Git way of working.
Yeah.
So I think maybe some overview, at least, of the sort of Git ways of working and branch control management are pretty important as well, at least for someone in the organization.
Yeah.
And the great thing is we are moving from more IFS specific technologies, tools to the best tools in the industry, right? So generic tools in the industry that people are already familiar with. In addition to the IFS development part of it, the tools are things that people should be more familiar with.
Or at least the skill sets are more readily available.
Exactly.
Thanks, guys. The next one we have is Cloud Build Place only applicable to IFS Cloud that databases are hosted by IFS Cloud Services, or as opposed to a customer who has their own hosted database?
It's applicable to all IFS Cloud, no matter where it's hosted.
Which environment to use in implementation phase, confirm, prototype, and config? That might be I read that word for word. So which environment to use in implementation phase?
So during the implementation phase, they should use the build place when they're preparing modifications. But as soon as they want to start the configuration, they should be moving to the config environment, the CFG environment, if it's a managed cloud service customer. If they're in their own environment, of course, we don't know what the names of their environments are, but we would expect them to have similar 3 tiers of environments, one for configuration, one for testing, and one for production. So the first configuration should be in the configuration environment in the use place.
Is there access to older version source codes, like an acquired build place in year 2022? Can you access 21R1 or 21R2?
Yes, you can access all of the supported versions of IFS Cloud at any time. So once it goes beyond, we will be supporting 3 at any time. Once it goes beyond 4, it won't be available.
Okay. Is there any risk?
Oh, why would you want to do that?
I mean, I guess the idea is that everybody, once you're on cloud, you can continue to move to the next version, right?
It wouldn't make any sense to access the historical versions really once you've done a release. But anyway, you could.
Is Build Place available for FSM customers?
Not really. Not for classic FSM customers. Yeah. So the strategy for FSM is for field service management to become available within IFS Cloud. And therefore, in that scenario, it's available.
So they should have the same functionality.
But not for the FSM product of all. The old FSM product, we don't have that functionality for them.
Okay. Moving on. What do you think the difference between upgrade and update is technically? Any self-restrictions or principles for updates to make things easier?
Well, upgrade is a word that is used within IFS to talk about moving from version to version within the old apps X environments, let's say. We don't use that word in cloud because we are thinking of it as a smaller step. Yeah, so we're talking about always updates, so either service update to be those regular packages of fixes, or a release update to talk about those twice a year functionality releases. But ultimately, it's the same. We are changing the software, but the mechanism for deploying that software is much improved as well to make it easier for customers.
And again, the smaller the jump you make, but once you're on cloud and you're doing release updates, the smaller the jump you make, the easier and simpler it becomes. So
less risk.
And less risk.
It sounds less painful too.
We'll see.
Okay, is it possible to spin up more environments in use place than once mentioned, config, test, and production?
Within the cloud service, I think there's a maximum of 6 environments that customers can order, but that's something they need to order by their account exec. They can't just be spun up on demand.
Is it possible for 2 developers to be working concurrently in Cloud Build Place?
Afridi, come on, you know this question's for you.
Yes, you can work parallelly. I think the main advantage of using Git compared to Harvest is that you can create any amount of tracks you require and work parallelly. So yes.
Would you recommend an apps 10 upgrade or direct to cloud upgrade from apps 9? If you're on apps 9, do you go to 10 and then cloud, or do you go to cloud directly?
I think the advantage to going to 10 has been clearly stated before. From a business point of view, if you're using Enterprise Explorer, and that's a big change management job for you to move to Arena only. If you move to 10 as an interim step, you can do that change management period over a period of time, and you can move your people into Arena only gradually. That's a kind of advantage for a business. Technically, you're better going straight to cloud. If you can manage that change within your organization, then you're better going straight to cloud, provided, let's say, the functionality you need is there. So certain regions don't necessarily have everything they need.
Is there any risk APK development and security development, particularly for IFS Managed Cloud? It's in reference to security vulnerability breaches.
I feel that we had someone from R&D to answer this question. I don't know.
Can you ask the question again?
It's just in regards to security vulnerability breaches. Is there any risk particular to IFS Managed Cloud? Am I saying that?
Yeah,
am I saying that wrong?
yeah,
Perhaps
don't
this is a
have
problem with typed questions occasionally.
Don't have a specific answer to that, but it is always safer to go to the latest version, right? Obviously, and if any vulnerabilities are identified, they are usually fixed in the next update. I can't remember any that is out there, but yeah.
And it goes back to the evergreen process as well, Chaminda, as well. What we're doing by putting an evergreen and a release cadence, which is so quick, is that once somebody's on IFS Cloud, they can be up onto the latest version. The trouble we've got with the old application X versions that we've got before, that if you're stuck on 9, then the Oracle version you're running is fixed, and the servers you're running tend to be fixed as well. So you're more likely to be hit with security vulnerabilities. Once you're on IFS Cloud, and if you keep the release cadence moving, then you de-risk that situation.
And all the cloud services are provided from Azure, so we have a certain level of protection in that sense. And the idea that it's safer because it's in the corner of your factory is a wrong assumption from a lot of the on-premise customers.
Another one about developing. What do you think about capacity of Build Place? For example, if we have 100 developers, can they develop, customize in a single Build Place? If not, what should we do in such situations? Have a bigger Build Place or multiple Build Places?
At the moment, you can't have multiple Build Places for one customer. You can only have one. So let's just remember, we are trying to move towards evergreen, so that we don't want to have 100 developers on a single customer project. However, if we have that need, then we will need to somehow support it. From a technical capacity, I'm sure there would be something we would have to do if we had 100 build developers co-build, sharing a build place. From a branching and control point of view, this is a state-of-the-art code management system that has been used by lots of software developers building massive programs. So functionally, I think we could do it. Technically, we probably would need to perhaps bolster some of the Azure resources around the build place that was taking so many.
And again, if there's a need to have 100 developers working in parallel, we'd want to probably question what we're trying to achieve and the milestones and we're trying to achieve it in. There would be better ways of doing it. There are more risks involved with trying to do 100 different modifications with 100 different developers at the same time than just the restrictions there may be in the build place and branching strategies.
Is it possible to spin up an environment that is completely devoid of any customer modifications?
Yes, absolutely.
that kind of what you start with in any case?
You can spin it up at any point. You choose the version that you want to spin it up from it whenever you request an environment.
Let's see, what else do we have?
About the question with on 100 developers, we know that 100 developers is not a likely scenario, but if you want to understand better how we can manage development when there's a reasonable number of developers on a project, you should see the previous webinar on best practices in CRIM development using IFS Cloud Build Places. I think we can post the link again at some point if you haven't seen that already. So that in that we talk about how to manage a development process.
Is it possible to extend the expiration date of environment build places?
Fundamentally, no. But we have done it now and again for customers. When a partner asked for this recently, I thought, well, why would they want that? But actually, the reason they wanted it is because they are using the build place for something it shouldn't be used for. So they've built up test data in the build place that they want to use for testing their development. So there are ways to build up test data in the build place using test to rest, scripted testing tool. If you build it up manually, then you need more than your 30 days probably. But that's not the recommended way to do it. So if you're asking that question, you're starting from the wrong place. So really, we can't, is the truth.
Or you shouldn't?
You shouldn't, yeah. You shouldn't need to.
How can we load customer-specific data into a build place for testing?
Forbidden to load customer data into the build place. You shouldn't try and have the customer data in the build place. You should think about moving your deliveries into the configuration place. There you have your customer data.
So that is the end of the questions we've had come right from our audience right now. Is there anything based on these questions that you guys want to get into? Did you cover a little more specifically or in detail?
I was probably going to jump on the customer data question as well. I think it previously we have sometimes taken advantage of using full customer data sets to be testing our modifications. It's not the way to go forward. We could easily be in breach of GDPR purposes, etc. And actually what we ought to be doing in the build place is very much what data do we need to test what we need to test. Full testing, yes, gets moved over into the use place, which ideally where you're testing there will be a copy of your production data anyway, and that's where the full testing takes place. But build place, it ought to be just the specific data we need to be doing our testing.
While we're in technical, how can people access the build place? How do you get access?
Well, you need to get red shoes and click them 3 times. You will get invited to the build place from the customer. So the customer themselves will get invited with a welcome email, and then the customer will invite anybody else that they want into the build place. Only the build place admin can invite other people to the build place. Then you'll get a link and credentials for logging in there.
Are there any performance or load testing tools in build place?
There are no performance and load testing tools in the build place at the moment.
Let me see. So we've kind of covered how many users can work at a time. Let's see, a follow-up question for Tony.
Oh, no.
Tony, you mentioned that it was possible to spin up an environment in the use place that is devoid of customer modifications. Can you elaborate a little bit on this? Can such an environment be used for reproductions or error in the standard product, for example?
In the use place or in the build place?
It says use place. You mentioned that it was possible to spin up an environment in the use place that is devoid of customer modifications. Perhaps I asked the first question incorrectly.
That's not what I meant.
Maybe I messed up the first one.
I mean, you could spin up a new environment and not send any deliveries to it. It would be possible in the use place as well. But the question before we had was answered around the build place. In the build place, you can spin up an environment on any available released software from IFS that you wish, and any service update version, and then, or you can spin it up from the customer repository of their modifications.
Let's see. Is there anything we, a partner, can do to achieve access to build place, a build place in a short lead time? Example, assign admin for build place beforehand.
So the actual time it takes to get build place access is about 45 seconds. So it's really, really quick. The difficult problem is getting the person to push the button to give you the access, and that needs to be done in the support portal. So the build place admin is the one that does that. Now, in the situation where a customer, and we've had this already, where a customer during the sales process assigns, for example, the IT director to be the build place admin, they are not the right person to do that. Okay, so it can be that they want somebody else to do that, and that could be a third party from a different company. That actually is not allowed at the moment. The person who is the build place admin should be a representative of the organization that bought the software. So in that case, if we wanted someone from Accenture to be the build place admin, we would give them credentials within that organization from Joe Blogg's Butchery, and then they could act as the build place admin. Then they could have a fast turnaround for giving access to anyone else.
There's one I'm not sure we can answer it based on what we're allowed to share, but somebody was asking how many people are really using Cloud 21 R2 currently? Are there customers running it currently?
No,
are they?
Because it's not launched yet.
R1, maybe we should answer that for R1.
For R1, we've got 58 projects in flight, let's say, of which I would say about 20 are paused for one reason and another. The other projects are in various states of moving towards getting ready to go live. So we expect the first customer to be live at the end of October. And then we have a number of customers going live before the end of the year. Some of those will move to R2 before go live. The first go live on R1 will be at the end of October.
Oh, thank you.
Which is what we expect. Yeah, that we didn't expect customers to be going live in a shorter time frame with a new product that's just been launched.
Oh, so do we see more new customers starting with cloud, or are we seeing people migrate to cloud, upgrade to cloud?
I never looked at that stat actually. I think it's probably around 50-50 at the minute. We had a lot of new customers to start with, a lot of greenfield customers, but in the second part of the year, we've had a lot of upgrade customers.
I have another question about the use place. This is one I may have messed up, possibly. So someone is interested in having a test environment in the use place. Do I need a new build place for such a code line?
We need a discussion about what they mean by, do they want a separate code line for the separate test place? And we need a discussion about that. But ultimately, at the moment, there's one code line for one customer for one build place. That's something we will look to change in the future, but we're starting simple. Yeah. So at the minute, we only have one code line for one customer. Now you can have different stages of that code line, and during the release process, we have two code lines. But in the normal steady state, it's one code line for one customer.
In a project, if both an IFS partner and customer are developing in build place, how is it recommended to move to use place?
Carefully.
Well, I think you're right there. I mean, if it was just IFS doing this one, we'd have a technical solution manager just managing that development team and coordinating that one. And I think the same thing would apply. Somebody, whether it's IFS, the partner or customer, would just need to take overall responsibility of at what point do we create the delivery, what are we delivering when it goes. So it is just a case of being managed within project with some sort of technical lead in one of those areas.
I think it's possible to run a project like that, but I wouldn't think it's advisable, because there would be a lot of stepping on stones, which causes commercial wranglings always. You know, people are undoubtedly going to cause problems for the other people.
Unless they're well separated. It could be that we have a partner who is in charge of the integration part of a project, and IFS maybe are doing some core coding, maybe the customer's doing some configurations. But the key again is there does need to be some overall ownership from a technical perspective, and to make sure we've got the
program
qualification gates in place.
Who is doing what, really?
Yeah.
There's no restriction in the tool that prevents you from doing that. It just needs.
And we do have situations already where customers are working with multiple partners in the build phase.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so one partner is taking care of certain things, another takes care of some other things, and that's within the tool allowed. It's at their risk, really.
It kind of ties into, there's another one that says, is it possible to make a partner, for example, IFS, the owner of Build Place, where they hold the responsibility of granting users access and not the customer?
So that's what I said before. We can do that, but only if they have an identity on behalf of the customer. We can't ever own the Build Place. The Build Place belongs to the customer. That's a key change with IFS Cloud. The Build Places of old belong to IFS, and they're within the IFS architecture. The Build Places that will come with IFS Cloud, they belong to the customer.
Let me see, we've kind of covered how many users can work. When we have more users, right, when you expand, is there a pricing change? What is the process to do that when you add more users?
The bundles of users are priced in the GPL. So yes, they can be ordered, but there is a cost.
We do have a question about service and versus release updates. So what are the major differences between a service and a release update?
Service update contains high priority fixes only and is delivered more regularly, let's say monthly. Worst case, some could be delivered more frequently, and doesn't contain any functional update, any new functionality. The release is all about the new functionality, but also contains fixes as well.
In regards to that, do you recommend, or can they just stick with service updates versus release updates? How far can you go if you just are sticking with service updates?
Every 23 months, they need to apply a new release. That's minimum.
Basically, when 3 are out, you need to be on one of the newest 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Just double check.
But each customer should work out their own, and I think this is a fundamental change for customers, really, because of the release cadence and the frequency of the release. Customers need to think about a strategy for service updates and releases, about when they will apply them, what fits with their organization. Some might want to do it every release when it comes out. They may want to have functionality within that release. If there's nothing they need, they may wait. They may skip that release and wait until the next one, and that's okay. But they need an approach to it, and to understand it's their responsibility to think about these things.
And there's no issue doing that if you skip a new one, if you want to go from 1 to 3 versus the second.
There's no 3, don't forget.
This one's kind of specific. Can we test printing configurations in Build Place?
Anyone?
I have no idea, to be honest.
Don't know.
There's a way to find out. Right? Get there and play with it. See what we can do. Okay. It's not Phil today. We are about 10 minutes left in our questions. So if you have another one, what is your suggestion for testing released updates for customers?
Well, one of the things that's on the roadmap for next year for the lifecycle experience is to bring a kind of automated testing tool within the framework. We don't have that now, So ultimately, we are talking about a proper regression test. So if it's a release, the customers need to organize for all key business processes to be tested.
And there are various stages to this as well. So the key business processes, as Tony said, bring it into your use place, into your AST, test all your business processes, make sure you're comfortable with it before it goes live. If you've got modifications in place, then actually the first place would be just to make sure that once you've configured the modifications, if there is any configuration needed in the build place, just test those modifications in the build place to make sure you're comfortable with them. Move it over to the use place, and then just make sure that any of your configurations are working, that your modifications are still working, and the core business flows still work the way you want them to as well before you go live.
We have covered all the questions in the queue, and we're at the end, pretty much at the end of our time. We have maybe 5 more minutes left in the session scheduled. What do you guys suggest people do next? They've done the training in IFS Academy. What's the next move?
Well, it depends whether they're already working with a customer or soon to be working with a customer with IFS Cloud. I think we have a internal build place. If they want to get their hands dirty in the meantime, that's something they can do. Lee, how do they go about requesting that? Used €5 through your letterbox?
We tend to send it through Afridi's letterbox, to be honest. But if you're an IFS employee, if you're a developer within IFS, either just ask Afridi for access or go via your manager, and we'll get sorted on that one.
Okay. Well,
looks like you have a fan.
Well, we are at the end of the session. If people still have questions, please come and post in the community. Everybody on the panel is in the community and active. So if you have questions, come and ask them there. We are recording this session. I will be posting it in the community probably later this afternoon. And Tony, I'll grab the slides from you as well, and we can get those shared as well.
Perfect.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you for your questions. Looking forward to seeing you in the community. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Lee, you may have to end it. I think I made you the owner.
How do I end? Oh, how do I end it?
X in the top right-hand corner, and that should say end webinar for all.
3, 2, 1. Here we go.